Welcome everyone gathered here today for this celebration of the poet Rita Joe. My name is Marilyn Smulders, and I'm the Executive Director of the Writers' Federation of Nova Scotia. And I'm going to start by saying a few words about why we've come together today. You may know that the third Monday in February is a statutory holiday. It's called Nova Scotia Heritage Day. In our province, rather than just make it a day off of school or work, it was decided to use the occasion to honor remarkable individuals who have contributed to our heritage. This year's honoree is Rita Joe, considered the poet laureate of the Mi'kmaq people. What better way to honor Rita Joe than to show how her writing and her life inspires and motivates writers today. And so we have invited these four writers, Rebecca Thomas, Tiffany Morris, Danica Roach, and Raymond Sewell, to tell us how Rita Joe has impacted them and their writing, and to share with us their writing. But before we go any further, I would like to turn over the podium to Sarah Fillmore, Director and CEO of the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. Sarah?
What a huge honor to be here with you today. As Marilyn mentioned, I'm Sarah Moore Fillmore. I'm the Interim Director and CEO at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. Jalasi, welcome, and I'm so glad to have you. What a beautiful, beautiful group in our gallery today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, and these treaties did not deal with the surrender of land and resources, but instead set out boundaries for what was to be an ongoing relationship between the nations. I am so pleased to welcome you all today, both those who are attending in person and those who are attending online, to this very exciting Heritage Day in celebration and to honor the legacy of Elder Rita Joe. Like communities that we are part of, the gallery is constantly changing. It's growing to be an inclusive gathering place for all to view, experience, and to create. And today is no exception. In fact, we hope it's the norm. We are so grateful that you have included us in today's important celebration, so thank you to the Writers' Federation for this strong partnership. Shortly, you are going to experience incredible works by incredible poets. Personally, I can't think of a better way to honor Rita Joe, who has paved the way for so many Mi'kmaq writers. And now, before I hand it over, I just want to recognize that for some of you, this may be the first time at the gallery. And some of you joining online may not have had a chance yet to join us here. I just want to personally invite you and personally welcome you. This is your gallery. It's yours, and we hope that you'll be back time and again to experience the many stories that are told here. This is your gallery. So now I'd like to welcome Raymond Sewell, who will bring us the welcome song.
Got a lot of names now. I'm very happy to be here to welcome y'all to this event. Like was said of Jalasi. Back home, I like to say I grew up in a musical. You know, everyone was singing at me all the time. Every time we had a Mawiomi or a gathering, we'd sing a song. So I'd like to share Donna Augustine's spirit song today. Abu Guan Minin Niskaminu Muktuada Sualinin Yo Yahi Yahi Yo Yahi Yo Yahi Yahi Yo Yahi Yo Yahi Yahi Yo Yahi Yo Yahi Yahi Yo Abu Abuguan winin dandeli el nua malkal dudie. Abuguan winin dandeli el nua sudmarie. Abuguan winin dandeli el nu geda begiadie. Abuguan winin iskaminu muktuada sualinin. Yo ya hi 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 yo. Abuguan winin dandeli el nukamal khaldudie. Abuguan winin dandeli el nukosudmadie. Abuguan winin dandeli el nukeda begiadie. Abuguan winin niskaminu muktuada sualinin. Yo ya hi 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 yo. Walalia, thank you.
Hey guys. All right, so now I'm just gonna bridge to say that Minister Pat Dunn wanted to share some words with you all today, and we're gonna Charlie's Angels him in. He's gonna talk to you from the screen. So I'm just gonna set it up.
Hello, welcome to Heritage Day celebrations for 2023. Heritage Day is our opportunity to tell the important stories of Nova Scotia's unique, diverse, and vibrant cultures. It's a day to honor remarkable people and places that have contributed to Nova Scotia's unique history. Heritage Day began in 2015 when a group of grade 12 students was chosen to select honorees who have helped shape Nova Scotia's heritage. Viola Desmond was the first honoree. This year we are excited to honor Rita Joe. Rita championed Mi'kmaq culture and language, and she has become known as the Poet Laureate of the Mi'kmaq. Rita was a well-known author whose works have been published and shared widely. Today is one way we honor Rita's greatest wish, to see more writings from her people and have children read them. Thank you to the Writers' Federation of Nova Scotia and the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia for bringing Indigenous writers and students together to celebrate Rita Joe. I hope you have a great day together. It is important that we continue to acknowledge our shared Nova Scotian history, including the contributions of Rita Joe and all Indigenous people who have made a positive impact in our society. I want to thank Rita Joe, her family, and the Mi'kmaq for their contributions to our province. Happy Heritage Day.
Gwe. Hello. My name is Rebecca Thomas. I am one of the former Poet Laureates of Halifax here, and I will be emceeing the festivities, the event this morning. I brought my nice little stack of things for my intro, and we'll begin, shall we? So I was asked to write an intro to Rita Joe as we talk about her work. We hear the work from Mi'kmaq artists and writers, and she's done so much. And I look at the time that I have. And so I tried to piece things about the feeling of Rita Joe that I have. And so for me, when I became Poet Laureate of Halifax, there was this big deal made saying that I was the first Indigenous Poet Laureate of Halifax. And I would wholeheartedly disagree, because as many people have acknowledged, that Halifax and all of Nova Scotia already had a Poet Laureate. We had our Mi'kmaq Poet Laureate, and her name was Rita Joe. I owe so much of my career to her, even though I've never met her. But I've had the privilege of visiting her community of Wegohoma, where she was born in 1932, and I've heard the way people talk about her. She was gentle and kind, and she had a desire to make sure she made people around her happy, for better and for her sometimes worse. Rita Joe attended the Kjipuktuk residential school for 4 years when she left at age 16. And I'm embarrassed to say that I have only recently read The Song of Rita Joe. And as I read her autobiography, it stuck out to me that throughout her life, she seemed to try and make herself small so as not to be seen as something in the way or therefore disposable. And when I think of upcoming Heritage Day, and I think of all of the work and the national impact her words have had, I can say very tongue-in-cheek that I think she failed in that regard. She published 7 books, was inducted into the Order of Canada, received an honorary doctorates from multiple universities, among many other achievements. And I don't know about you, but I'm internally grateful that she took up as much space as she did. So Ruth Holmes Whitehead wrote the introduction to Rita Joe's autobiography. So did I tell you that I already read it, that you should all read it, and it's fabulous? Please go out and get it. But as I was saying, Ruth wrote, I learned from watching her reach out in loving communication to everyone around her. This is the way I strive to move through this world. One day, and hopefully on to the world next, that comes after this. What a beautiful legacy to have. She wasn't all soft. I can hear the passion and conviction in her words when she talks about her pride in the Mi'kmaq culture and language. And before I read her iconic poem, I Lost My Talk, and my companion poem, I'm Finding My Talk, I want to end on a few words of Rita's, who just wanted to bring joy to the sad eyes of her people. I look at this room and I see what joy we have now, and I think she's accomplished much. I hope the future holds a better promise. Our heritage has not died. It lives in the eyes of our people. Those eyes are sometimes sad, sometimes hostile, sometimes hidden, sometimes curious, watching to see what you will do next. I too have been a watcher. I have watched this world that we live in since my childhood. I have watched it from the rooted world of my mom, dad, foster homes, and Indian residential school. Some people would say that this world is bad. I know people who came from this world and have gone on to productive lives, and I know some who have not. Their scars too deep. My message is gentle. If one wishes to be healed, one must dwell on the positive. Today, it is the image of my people that is uppermost in my mind. It is our beauty that must be discovered now, and this thought inspires the next. Remember, I found the good. Look at us, and you too will find the good. So with that, to find the good, I'm going to read I Lost My Talk. Go out and get her book. It's fabulous. The illustrations were done by another amazing Mi'kmaq artist, Pauline Young, who is a wonderful woman. And so we shall begin. I lost my talk, the talk you took away. When I was a little girl at Kjipuktuk school, you snatched it away. I speak like you. I think like you. I create like you. The scrambled ballad about my word. Your way is more, 2 ways I talk, both ways I say. Your way is more powerful. So gently I offer my hand and ask, let me find my talk so I can teach you about me. I don't know about you, but when I first read that poem, it stopped me in my tracks. As somebody who comes from a history and legacy of residential school, as my father right now is unwell, and I think about the gentleness that she had, and I try to carry that with me. This notion of staying soft when the world wants you to be nothing but edges. And I think that there's a specific strength that goes to that. And so I wrote this poem. I'm finding my talk. I'm finding my talk, the one I never had, the one that the schools took away from my dad. I'm finding my talk one word at a time. Gwe, Walalin, Numultis. Sometimes they are very old, sometimes they rhyme. I'm finding my talk when I'm up on the stage telling big stories or scribbling words on a page. I'm finding my talk, I'm meeting my family, I'm making new friends who choose to love me. I'm finding my talk with clumsy feet that pat down the grass with every drum beat. I'm finding my talk with every bead. My regalia speaks through each stitch and seam. I'm finding my talk, it's in my smudge bowl. When the smoke curls around me and makes me whole, I'm finding my talk, how it's written across the land, learning to take only what I need. Nedugalam helps me understand. I'm finding my talk through my community, from elders to kids. This world is still new to me. I'm finding my talk by speaking to my father, by loving him, and being his daughter. I'm finding my talk by speaking with my sister, knowing we're different, and I miss her. I'm finding my talk through nephews and nieces, teaching them they are complete with all their different pieces. I'm finding my talk. It's on the inside. It's how I see the world through not one, but two eyes. I'm finding my talk, and it may take some time, but I'm learning to speak in a language that's mine. Walalin. So, this is not the Rebecca Thomas Show. So I will be introducing our first presenter, Tiffany Morris. Tiffany is a Mi'kmaq settler, writer of speculative fiction and poetry from Kjipuktuk, Nova Scotia. She is the author of horror poetry collection, Eulogies of Rotting Stars. Her work has appeared in Uncanny Magazine, Nightmare Magazine, and Apex Magazine, among others. She has an MA in English and with a focus on Indigenous futurisms. She is a member of the Speculative Fiction Poetry Association and the Horror Writers Association, and her work has been nominated for Elgin, Riesling's, and Aurora Awards. Her work is Banadak, The Sun Begins to Shine Through the Clouds. Please welcome Tiffany to the mic.
Malaliok. It was a little weird to not be writing horror poetry, but in fact be writing something that is rooted in my own experience of reading Rita Joe and meeting Rita Joe, which I was so privileged to do, and thinking about my place as someone who was raised outside of my community. My Mi'kmaq family is from Eskizoni, and to have been raised by people who didn't have the language, and in my adulthood be coming back to the language. So it gave me so much to think about, and I was grateful to have this opportunity to do so and share my thoughts with you. Banedak. The sun begins to shine through the clouds. Oh yeah, and because I'm reclaiming language, please forgive me if anything in my pronunciation is off. Feel free to gently correct me afterwards so I can continue this journey of learning. Banedak. The sun begins to shine through the clouds. The words arrive on my doorstep from another time. Language ancient as Unamagi, land of fog, land of my birth, and Ulnu. With people of the dawn are people whose eyes open to the sunrise from time immemorial, drinking in the Muskanamuk blue of sky, embracing the Inludewamuk gray of sea. Banedak, the sun begins to shine through the clouds. Each hour of the day refracts our light into the perpetual now. In the evening, the bukdo fire hums, the song sung by those who came before us and those who we await. For time is a cycle from season to season and story to story. We speak because they spoke. We sing because they sang. And we write because they wrote. Rita's words forever in our heritage that never dies. Rita's words in the land and minds of our people, and these too are our monuments. Along with valley clinging to sky and bloom to blossom, water to horizon, stretching into the endless tiers of infinity. The icy messages from stars, the eelskin and birch bark write our witness from then to now to each woven future. Wishgabeneok is becoming dawn, Rabanaduk. The sun begins to shine through the clouds that break over time. And as long as the sun and moon shall endure, we walk beside the shadows of those that came before and carry their light following the star-shining patterns and the moose and fish and crows and seasons that speak with us in our shared language, the stories of this land. Walaliok.
Well, Alan, Tiffany, I love that. I love this idea of a spring after winter, and that when Rita wrote, she was talking about a time that was cold and that was dark, and as we come through, we see this spring. I see the spring in this youth from my possibly late summer, early fall stage of my life. Thank you so much. And so next up, I'm going to introduce Danica. So Danica Frances Roach is mixed ancestry mother of 4, born and raised in Kjipuktuk. The daughter of Mi'kmaq journalist and educator Trina Roach, Danica's Mi'kmaq family is spread out across Kjipuktuk, Glooscap, and other communities in what we now call Nova Scotia. A past participant of the Alistair MacLeod mentorship program, Danica is working on her first novel, the first 5 years, and I will promote it with such exuberance and excitement as I did the Song of Rita Joe. Welcome, Danica.
Well, Lala and Rebecca, thank you. Before I begin, I just want to note that my voice is kind of wonky. I'm not sick, but I lost my voice at the start of the new year, and it hasn't really come back yet. I could easily blame my kids and say that they never stop asking me questions, but truthfully, I've come to learn that I never stop talking. So with that being said, if my voice gets weird, I'm sorry. So over the last month and a half, I have been looking at Rita Joe's work with a renewed focus. I've been thinking a lot about her impact, her legacy, and what she means to me personally. Rita Joe began her writing career after she became a mother. In her autobiography, she talks about writing at the kitchen table and her kids helping her or giving input. As a mother myself, it's encouraging to know that she thrived as a writer well in the throes of motherhood. She was able to write these meaningful, long-lasting works while also dealing with the mundane, everyday tasks of parenting, which in the moment can feel really overwhelming and challenging. As someone who did not grow up speaking Mi'kmaq, the idea of learning the language, of jumping into it and making mistakes or mispronouncing things is intimidating, enough to make me not want to try. But in my consumption of all things Rita Joe this past month, I watched the 1993 documentary, Rita Joe, Song of Eskasoni, and she talks about her first time going to Eskasoni and speaking the language, and she says, I asked all sorts of questions, and I made mistakes with my Mi'kmaq, and they corrected me, laughing it off, and I laughed along with them. As Rebecca said, Rita Joe found her talk. She had the confidence to reclaim her language, the humility to accept her mistakes, and the sense of humor to laugh it off, learn something, and then keep going, which is so inspiring for someone like myself who lives in perpetual fear of mistake-making. Ultimately, I think what resonates most for me in Rita Joe's work and for a lot of Mi'kmaq is how she addresses linguistic and cultural loss, and conversely, how she addresses their revival and reclamation. And this is what I had in mind when I sat down to write, so often at my kitchen table, surrounded by my children. Even as I practiced reading this aloud, my kids constantly interrupted with their takes and questions, but that's okay, at least they're listening. With that being said, my piece is called Family Heirlooms. My mother is learning to speak Mi'kmaq. When I pack my 4 kids up in our minivan, preparing to leave her house, she'll call out Gasalul and blow a kiss. I'll get the final child strapped into their car seat. A little out of breath, I'll lean in, hug my mother, and say I love you in English. In the prologue of her autobiography, Rita Joe says, being strangers in our own land is a sad story. My great-grandmother, Katie Francis, would only speak Mi'kmaq if she thought she was alone with her sister. My papa and his brothers only heard the language through hushed murmurs while they listened, hidden around corners in their old house on Creighton Street. Madawulayan, how are you? I asked my mother to repeat the word she just used. Say it again, I ask. What was the word? She slows down the syllables, makes sure I hear each one. When I say the word back, it's stilted and awkward. Madawulayan. The ripple effects of colonization and genocide have made it strange on my tongue. My mother teaches my kids the names of animals. My third son is named Bear, Muin. Muinjij, little bear, my mother says. My kids all laugh and repeat it back. My great-grandmother hid her talk in the quiet moments when she thought only her sister could hear, when she didn't think it could be repeated, learned, passed down. My mother is learning the language through flashcards, Zoom lessons, and a Mi'kmaq dubbed version of the movie Chicken Run. Rita Joe spent 4 years at Shubenacadie Residential School. In her poem 9, she describes her time there. She writes, "They say that I must live a white man's way, this day and age still being bent to what they say." In her autobiography, she says that over the years, so much trauma happened in the residential school, so many people were hurt. My papa was born in 1936, just 4 years after Rita Joe. It wasn't until 20 years later, in 1956, that Indigenous people became citizens of Canada. My papa escaped the horrors of residential school, but racism accomplished the same goals. He grew up in a world where Mi'kmaq weren't considered people. Traditional ceremonies were banned. Many establishments in Halifax didn't allow Mi'kmaq people in. As my great-grandmother raised her children on Creighton Street, Halifax raised a statue of Edward Cornwallis. It's no wonder she and her sister only spoke Mi'kmaq when they thought no one was listening. It's no wonder my papa grew up with a sense of shame about being Mi'kmaq. It's no wonder my family struggles with a sense of loss. In her poem 3, Rita Joe writes, "Regret stays with me. I reflect upon myself, unforgiving. Uncertainty returns to haunt the native ways I abandoned. The years barely leave a trace, but the sun's warmth reminds my senses not to yield completely." It's late summer. Sunlight streams through the windows of my mother's kitchen. My mom holds out her phone. "Look, I found them out by the shed." She shows me a picture of these delicate, all-white plants growing in a small bunch, bursting forth from the mossy undergrowth of the forest floor. Indian pipe. She swipes to the next photo. "These ones are by the driveway." She holds the phone out again. "It makes me feel like our ancestors are close," she says. She takes my children outside and shows them the plants. She tells them how the ancestors gathered and left their pipes for the Wugaladamuj, the little people, to clean. My mother and my kids crouch down in the woods to have a closer look. The most important thing to remember, my mother says, is not to pick them. Rita Joe said that the image of Indigenous people has been knocked down for too long by the old histories and old chronicles. In her poem Warriors, she writes, "Your history tells our children what you want them to learn, that the Indian is the violent one, the wars the white man always won." In her second book, Song of Eskasoni, Rita Joe says she was at war, but it was a gentle war. She wanted to talk about what she knew to be true and write the positive image of her people, the Mi'kmaq. She said, "The beauty in our expression and culture is there if one looks for it." I grew up in a world with Rita Joe. I read her poem, I Lost My Talk in School. I reap the benefits of her gentle war. Her legacy creates space for young Mi'kmaq people to feel seen and heard. Our own feelings of loss, cultural identity, and community reverberated back at us. Can you imagine what that would have done for my papa as a little boy who grew up in the shadow of a statue that celebrated a man who would have ordered him scalped? Who grew up watching Westerns on the big screen. He was inundated with the North American creation story, enamored with the Wild West where the Indians were caricatures, either savage villains or simple sidekicks, never the heroes. Shame is a shitty family heirloom. It's a painting that gets carted around with you every time you move. It survives every redecoration. It doesn't occur to you that you can get rid of it because it was given to you by a loved one. It hangs around for decades until finally someone says, "This is really ugly, we don't need this," and puts it on the curb on garbage day. Being strangers in our own land is a sad story. My uncle grew up without seeing himself reflected in the faces around him. The shape of his face, his prominent nose, his height and build, there was no one for him to point to in our immediate family and say, "See, this is where I got this from." At a Francis family barbecue at a cousin's house over the summer, someone said to my uncle, "You look like Michael Francis. Let me go grab a picture." They came back with a framed photo of Katie's brother, a startling likeness of my uncle. His features duplicated in a black and white photo, a passed-down nose, an inherited stature, family traits he'd never known who to thank for. Being strangers in our own land is a sad story. My family gained status under Bill C-31, a flawed bit of legislation in 1985 introduced to correct gender discrimination within the Indian Act, but I cannot pass on status to my kids. For my family, legal status as Indians ends with me. My identity, my family's reclamation, is an act of resistance, resilience. If the Indian Act had succeeded, if the Canadian government's assimilationist policies had succeeded, I wouldn't be standing here reading this essay. Yet, as a person with mixed ancestry, as someone who didn't grow up on reserve, as an urban Mi'kmaq who's still finding cousins, who's still finding my talk, as someone who suffers from anxiety, who delights in the isolation of writing, but is terrified of public speaking, navigating the politics, thank you, navigating the politics and practicalities of Mi'kmaq identity and culture and community is a challenge. But to harken back to Rita, I am not yielding completely. And I see these acts of resistance and reclamation, this refusal to yield all around Mi'kma'ki. That statue of Edward Cornwallis, Mi'kmaq heroes made sure that came down. Remember the Alton Gas Project? That didn't happen because Mi'kmaq protected the waters. For some of us, the wins are small but meaningful. These ways of knowing. It's learning a new word. It's my mother telling me the name of the Indian pipe plant when I didn't know it before. Teaching my kids the name for bear. The strengthening of family ties, the passing down of familial memory. Rita Joe wrote, "Being strangers in our own land is a sad story, but if we can speak, we may turn this around." Walaliak.
I mean, for someone who says that you're not good at public speaking, you really knocked it out of the park. And a lot of what you said definitely resonates with me, especially around this notion of status cards, right? Because in 1 week from today, my status card will be expired and I will wake up and I will no longer be Mi'kmaq, apparently. So I think sometimes we place too much emphasis on the musings of those who came before us, about us, without us. So next I would like to introduce Raymond Sewell, who is an Ilnu poet, singer, songwriter, and English professor from Pabineau First Nation, New Brunswick. Raymond and I have had the pleasure of performing and being at events together multiple times, and I always really enjoy your work. And since a young age, you've been writing and producing creative works. Raymond currently lives in Bedford, Nova Scotia, and is inspired by the ocean. Dream and Conversation with a Basket is the title of his work that we will hear now. Please welcome Raymond.
Yeah, that's louder than I thought. I like to write with material culture, to embody myself with stuff that was created by my people. So I bring my Medewan rattle. I wrote this story, Conversation with a Basket. I teach literature, and a lot of times we occupy space outside the brain, so I want to re-embody myself with the poetry. That's why I like spoken word and that. And rematriate to the land. Because the land is inextricable from my experience anyway. So this, it's actually 2 poems. The first one is Conversation with a Basket, and it's a shorter poem. And then I'd like to go into my other one about dreaming. Okay, Rita Joe, they said, "Hey, will you write something for Rita Joe?" And I said, okay, that's scary, you know, because I love Rita Joe's work so much. If I'm adding anything to the canon, or anything in any kind of orbit around Rita Joe, I want to make sure it's appropriate and I'm saying everything I want to say. So I immediately thought about the matriarch. We're from a matriarchy. I thought about Rita Joe. I thought about rematriation. Some of the elders, Nedawak, say we return poems and we sing to the earth. You know, we treat the earth mother in that way. So with that, I'd like to share that I'm a product of all my grandmother's teachings and that survived when they shouldn't have. So, conversation with a basket. I count myself lucky to be here with you, to dream with you. You are like me. You were not supposed to occupy this future. But here we are, the holders of things, many things. We know the joy of burden, carrying things. We know the cloistering of culture and the blooming of culture. We both hold ceremony and aspirations, auntie energy. We are both faded by the sun, and inside we have the colors of our birth. We have been dyed by berries, gathered by brown hands. We are both weaved in oral tradition. We hold wonderful medicines. I think of our surfaces in allegory and symbols. We came from Creator, and Creator blissed in our arrival. Creator will bliss when we leave. I count myself lucky to have existed with you. You are my relative. So there's a song we sing back home. It's passed down. It's an intimate song between a child and a parent. It's called Baba Bijis. I'd like to do a little excerpt of that and then read my poem about rematriation. So, Baba Bijis, Nanige Baba Bijis, Apchi Juinak Wel Madum, Megak Nin Ge Salu, Nugu Buntemi, Na Buntemi, Naginek Lalultes Nijanchich, Gesalu, Mut Wel Majidas Unijanchich, Nugu Buntemi, Na Buntemi, Baba Bijis, Nanige Baba Bijis, Apchi Juinak Wel Madum, Megak Nin Ge Salu, Nugu Buntemi, Na Buntemi. So that song plays out in those boring summer nights out in isolation in Winpegajouik. The fridge is humming, you know, the windows are open. There's that intimate relationship that you hear as you're lulled to sleep. So I wrote this poem, Bewai. I dream, thinking about Rita Joe saying we're from the land of the dreamers. So I dream, I talk to the earth mother. I tell her what the animals are up to. I tell her what the medicines are doing when they are dreaming. I tell her what the trees are up to. I unpack landscapes. I see story rocks roll and leave lines in the earth under their bellies. The burden of carrying stories, the burden of letting them down, the pride of carrying them. Stone bellies, warmed bellies, cold bellies, cute bellies, rock bellies, mummy tummies. I'm related like stone and egg, the red of willows waiting to be picked. Medicines, shivering lines of black salmon. I'm like them sometimes in the river, sometimes I'm them on the ice at Superstore. I tell them about mud, I tell her about the mud and how it houses life, frog eyes like little bubbles, the taste of mud and rainbow trout, the mud in me, little mud belly, the slow step of the bobcat, its claws in the mud, its leaps recorded, in the land of the dreamers, near the spaceship that is the legislature. Back to herds of rocks, rolling egg rocks, hard enameled bellies, the cracks in the bear's teeth, the wind through the bones, the bite marks on the eagle whistle, the chewing that mothers love. I am my mother, I am profound ingenuity. I am encouraged to bust through shells and skin to be something else. I am burps from a belly, drums happening in the belly of band halls in summer. Jumps and kicks underneath, mother is creator. I return to red willows, medicines schedule me, happy to see me return to pick them. The oxygen tank sound is there, the whitening hair, ice eyes of the matriarch are there. She speaks and caresses a conch, leading me down the spiral, defining life, leading me into the water and sunrises. Shell medicine, dawn medicine, hanging out in the ocean medicine. She is thin and her skin is bark-like. It is beautiful. She is sunrise. Matriarchs and sunrises, they have that energy. The oxygen tank is still there. Lungs sounding like shells on strings in the wind. I am there. I am witness to the profound. I am marrying dreams and motifs. I am there as salmon on ice, dead, struck dumb, drop jaw. I am there as beach creature. I am there as waist deep. I am the awkward one. I am there before the matriarch. I am there to be shaped by oral traditions. I am there to be shelled dumb. I am there as mud robot, to be predetermined and tickled. Mother and her elder facsimiles doing auntie things, steering me by the head. It is all so beautiful. Oxygen machines counting. Tears and rivulets, the start of rain, the first few drops of dry rain that hit a thirsty earth, the receiving of rain slowly. Minute craters in the smallest little dirt opening like baby bird mouths. Baby bird sounds, egg sounds, witnessing birth and aging, all the sunrises of elders and babies, the energy of giving into crying. Her eyes like ice. I remember the blue stuff, blue medicine, back home ice, slush steps. When she says, "Oh, Gilbert," squishing my cheeks. And she says, "Xavier, Xavier." The wolf girl takes my hand and says, "Tell me a story about falling love." And I say, "The circus, the first awkward handhold before parting ways." And the stories are there like glowing marrow, dumping wheelbarrows of stories on a hungry audience. The elders never stop telling stories, mostly the same stories, teaching and learning and sharing berries with mother and touching stones in jubilation. My past is made of collective memories. Destruction medicine, creation medicine, color medicine, elder medicine, Indian butter medicine, ice eye medicine, story laugh medicine, touching earth medicine, dream medicine. That's it. Thanks.
I didn't expect to cry today, but yet here we are. I think about all the stories that are out there that, what have I missed? What can I hold on to? That reminded me of that, in a good and bad way, you know. Art moves people, here we are. So with this ends our online programming. I'm looking to the people in the back for my nods, for my nose. Yeah, okay. This ends our online programming, and I want to say walaliak to those who tuned in. I really appreciate you folks doing that, and I want to thank the Writers Federation and the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, and I want to thank Rita Joe and everyone here who has told their stories over and over and over again. Sometimes the same story, sometimes iterations of the same story, sometimes new stories altogether. And with that, I'm also going to invite Aidan Gillis up, who collaborates on programs and some exhibitions at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia here in Kjipuktuk as the Indigenous Arts Programmer. Aidan is also an artist and loves to paint and sew, drawing inspiration from his Mi'kmaq French roots and from his home on the west coast of Newfoundland. He graduated from NSCAD in 2017 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a minor in Art History, and he is on the board of directors for the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre, the Indigenous Curatorial Collective, and a member of the Canadian Art Gallery Educators. So Aidan's going to come up and talk to us about what we're going to be doing next in person, and I will bid adieu to the people who are, or bid nomultis to the people who are online. So thank you so much, and welcome on up, Aidan.